A lot of people try to guess what the surprise was, but one of the viewers of mine sent me his picture of a container. It looks like about a 1 gallon. It's got a spigot on it. This was what I was talking about, thinking out of the box, making something a little different than just running and buying a fish tank from the store and setting it up. It's like ho-hum, same old, millions of people have it. This is something that's different. I mean, and I will repeat this probably throughout the video. Doesn't mean it's cheaper, but it does give you satisfaction that you did it yourself, and it is something a little different. So let's get into this video. So this is the container I bought off of Amazon. It's a 2.7 gallon container. And I'll leave a link below in case anybody's interested. Yes, it has a spigot. So I took it all apart, cleaned it, and put the spigot back. The next thing I want to do is build a drain for it, and I'll show you why. So this is just PVC I had, but the PVC you have there is hot water PVC 1/2 inch. You can buy it at any hardware store. I bought that at Lowe's, and I connected it up, and that fit right over the spigot. So once it's been tightened, I just used a little bit of silicone at the bolt end, and now when it siphons out water, as you can see, it will siphon out water lower than what the spigot is. And I did this on purpose, and I'll show you why. Now the black tubing, you could use the normal tubing, from the cold water. This is something I had on hand. Already had holes drilled in it, so it fit. I used it. And that's what it looks like. Because this is almost 3 gallons, I can sacrifice a little bit of the bottom part of the beverage container. And a lot of people said, oh, it's going to be a lemonade container. These are just called beverage containers. That's all. You can put anything you want in it. And here's a little sample of it. Now, as you notice, I put stones in it. Big stones. These stones are about double the size of pea gravel, and just to cover up the spigot. So when water goes through, the spigot is actually pulling water through those stones, which are about twice the size. Here's a bag of the stones. It just from, I think, Petco had it. It's a 20 pound bag of these stones. I would have went with a little bit bigger, but this is the biggest size they have. This will allow water to move freely through the stones. Now I put a craft mesh, and then I put about 1.25 inches of sand. Now this sand is a little different than play sand or pool sand. It's bigger. I bought it at Lowe's. It's called beach sand. It took only 1 container. Big deal. It is bigger than the play sand, and it is bigger than the pool sand that you can buy at the hardware store. I bought this at Lowe's also. It's in their section where they have plants and stuff, where they sell stones. It costs $5 for 5 pounds. It was more than enough to fill up the container, which is 12 inches in diameter. Then all I did is start dressing up the wood. I used green string to put the moss on it. This wood is going to go inside the container. And that's pretty much it. But like I said, if you're looking to save money, no, this probably isn't a project for you. If you're trying to save money, you might as well buy what's off the shelf. Okay, so this is the finished product of what it looks like. Finally all set up and ready to go. The sand is, according to what I have here, the sand is about 1.25 inches deep. This is 5 pounds of sand here. This gravel here is about twice the size of pea gravel. I would have got a little bit bigger, but this is the biggest I had at Petco. Now the tank is completely set up. from the very top, it's 21 inches tall with the lid. And in this installment, my next installment will be part 3. I will get into lighting, different lightings that you can use for something like this. It depends on if you want to use a lighting system in the cap that comes with it, or would you prefer to use a lighting system without the cap on. But that will be in part 3, and I'll list everything. So if you want to order anything off Amazon, I'll give you the addresses and stuff so you can go buy the materials. This was just bought off of Amazon. Now, this is just what I chose. Some people will not do it this way. And the reason I built it this way, where you have your layer of beach sand, a divider, and then you have your open layer here with very big pebbles in it, as everyone can see. A little bit of sand has migrated in here, but that's not going to bother anything. Okay, so let's take a look at this and find out why I did what I did. This part here is almost acting like a plenum. And if you see real close, like right here, there's an air bubble. See it when I wiggle it? So then how are you going to turn around? And here's air. So when you take this sand and you put it directly on the bottom of an aquarium or one of these, and sometimes people will put the sand at the bottom and leave the spigot, so the spigot is higher than their substrate. I didn't do that with this. I made it so it went right above the spigot, then I went with sand. The distance between here and the very, very top here is 2 gallons of water. So this is 12 inches in diameter, and from the distance between here to the very top of where I have the water line, that's 2 gallons of water exactly. This is a 2.7 gallon container. So it's a pretty decent sized container. You can buy these containers as big as 5 gallon. So that's strictly up to the individual, what size you want and what container you want. But the reason I did this is because when you drain the water out of here, it will drain it through the substrate and through here to make sure that you're taking out water from here and from the main body of water. Instead of having to, if this was laying at the bottom, you're going to have to stir this sand up. Whether it's, this is 5 pounds of beach sand, you're going to have to stir it up once in a while, because what happens is it will start turning black at the very bottom of the container. Now I'll explain to you something. Whenever you look at a container like this, and what do you see? You see a terrarium. And the reason terrariums have changed throughout the years for the past 30 years is they found out that they would layer things like this for the terrarium and the dirt and everything else. And they found out that they were going sour. And the plants would start dying, and the terrarium wasn't doing good. So one thing they found out, they had a layer. They had to put drainage. Then they had to put carbon. The carbon would keep the whole thing sweet. And then they would layer it up. And if you look at terrariums that you buy from a shop, a flower shop, they're layered. And they do it for a reason, because they found out that in order to keep the soil sweet, and that's the word they would use, they needed to layer it, and they needed to use carbon. And that would keep it going longer. So I've done the same, pretty much the same here. You have your plenum here, where water is being drained from the plenum, the bottom of the plenum, and you have your sand, so water is able to go through the sand. If you don't do it this way, this is going to turn black at the bottom, because you have to keep it stirred up. And as you can see, if I can get close enough, you can see, like here, And here, I don't know if you can see that or not, but you will see air pockets here, here. And this sand is larger than play sand, and it's larger than pool sand. This is beach sand. It is a larger sand grain than those two sands. Those two sands are very close in size, where this is almost double the size of a grain of sand this beach sand is. That's why I bought it. I just bought a package from Lowe's, 5-pound pack, and that's what I used. If in case it looks a little different than other sands and how big it looks, look how big the grains are of sand. That's because this is called beach sand. Like I said, I bought it from Lowe's. Anyhow, so when you want to empty it, you just get the spigot, put a gallon jug underneath there, and I know that if I empty it a whole gallon, I know then that's 50% of the capacity of water. Because once you reach the sand part here and empty out the rest, you don't get as much water. You get maybe a quarter of a gallon of water, if that much, because it's being displaced by all the stones and sand. The water is from here on down. But I know for a fact from here on up is 2 gallons. So actually the fish will have 2 gallons of water, 12 inches in diameter for a container like this. So that's about it for building an unusual container. And as you can see, it makes a real nice showpiece. Now you can buy whatever container you want. That's up to you. The third part, I'm going to get into lighting. I'll show you how to make a light like this if you're interested. If you buy something like this, I'm going to show you a couple options that you have for a particular thing like this to make. And I will admit right off the bat that if you are a hobbyist and you are one of those people who are on a budget and you are counting your pennies, this is probably not a project for you, because this is not meant to be a cheap project where you can just go to the aquarium store, Petco, PetSmart, and hurry up and just buy a aquarium. It's got a light and everything. This is all customizable. How bright you want the light, what kind of plants you want to use, how deep you want to make the substrate, and the way it looks. It's all, that's why it looks different. It's out of the box. You're thinking out of the box. It makes a perfect Betta tank. It makes a perfect, let me see if I did put a fish in there. Yeah, he's kind of hiding right now, but it makes a perfect paradise tank. It even will make a nice tank for a couple of miniature gouramis, or if you have a chocolate gouramis, which are very small, or you have the dwarf gouramis, because they all will get their oxygen from the air. But there's also another thing to think about, that this, when you drain it, is acting like more of what natural systems do. If you think about ponds, rivers, lakes, streams, water is constantly flowing out of them. That goes to the groundwater. Okay, that's how you can dig a well and you got the groundwater. Well, these lakes, rivers, and streams are constantly losing water through them. It may happen very slowly, but they are losing water. That water that keeps seeping through the rivers and lakes and streams goes to groundwater, and we all know then that groundwater can be used for wells and stuff like that. So we're exactly mimicking that. Whenever you turn the spigot on, okay, you're allowing water now to pass through here, so you don't have to stir up the sand, and pass through here, and then you're allowed to fill it back up again and start the process over. If you want to water change once a week, once a month, once every fortnight, that's strictly up to you. But when you make a system like this, you're going to prevent the souring of the sand. And I purposely use sand because of that purpose, to show everybody that eventually, if you don't keep stirring up the sand, it's going to turn black at the very bottom, and that's called souring, because you have anaerobic bacteria turning it black because oxygen cannot get through it, especially when you have one of these containers where you can literally see the bottom by lifting up the container, and you'll see what I mean, that after a few months it will start turning black. This, because the water can be drained through it, will never turn black. Okay, you'll always have aerobic conditions or anoxic conditions. You'll have low oxygen levels, of course, but you will still have anoxic conditions to help do the complete nitrogen cycle. And by opening up this tap, people would say, well, aren't you taking the oxygen that's in here and moving it to here? Absolutely. But remember, this is low oxygen. There's no bubblers in here. There's no big exchange of oxygen. That's why we're using the fish we can, because they take their oxygen from the air. And then once it moves through here, that oxygen that's in here that you moved through the substrate here will get used up, and then the bacteria, the facultative bacteria, will go back to stealing their oxygen by other means through the phosphates and nitrates and stuff like that. So basically, the spigot here to do a water change serves several purposes for these small containers. It's easier to maintain, it's easier to do a water change, and it's easier to make sure your biological activity stays active and correct on path of what you want without going anaerobic. And that's what we want. We want it to stay anoxic and not go anaerobic. So that's about it for this video. And part 3, like I said, I'll get into different lightings. And maybe give you some ideas if you think you want to buy a container like this. And remember, these containers can be bought, they can be bought Amazon, they can be bought at Pier 1, they can be bought at Wayfair, Overstock.com. These containers are sold all over the place. So do your homework and check out all the different containers. There's all kinds, like I said, they even go up to as much as 5 gallons. And like I said, this is 2 gallons just from here to here. So if you think about it, if you get some of those mason jars or something, they're only about 2 gallons. Even though I'm taking up all this room here, because this is 2.7 gallons, almost 3 gallons, I'm using up this room as its biological filter, and this, which has the 2 gallons, is more than enough space for Bettas. That's another thing I want to bring up. I had comments being made, which are misnomer, they're false comments. One person made a comment, Bettas need 10 gallons of water. No, they don't. Bettas don't even need 5 gallons of water. Bettas in Thailand are grown up in half-gallon jars. That's right. They separate all the males in half-gallon jars, and that's how they grow them up. And I asked them about it, and these are right from the breeders in Thailand, and they said, this is the way we grow them. We put them in these, and they have hundreds or thousands of these jars full of bettas. He said, this is how we grow them. They don't need really much more space than this. So if you give a betta a space like this, this is gigantic. Most bettas, as you've noticed, they don't swim around a lot. Most of them will stay at the top where plants are. They mostly hover at the bottom. They're not a fish that moves around constantly. Even paradise fish will do the same thing. They basically will hide, stay someplace without constantly moving around like maybe a dwarf gourami would do, where they'll swim more. But remember, because you have no filters, you have no bubblers, you have nothing to move the water, okay, this is the best way to do it, because you still have to move fluids through your substrate. Otherwise, you're going to get in trouble down the road, 6-7 months down the road, if you don't change this and it sits directly on the bottom. Especially if you use sand, you are going to get blackening underneath the sand. No oxygen is going to get to it, and therefore it's going to become anaerobic. where you get assimilative denitrification, and you don't want that. So by doing this, and by the way I did it, I will prevent that. Now, this will last for years and years and years and years and years. This will last. This container. I mean, when you set something like this up, you won't have to break it down for years because of the way it's designed. You want to do a water change, open up the spigot. But bettas do not need large containers. Neither do paradise fish. They're not one of those fish that are like other fish that need all kinds of elbow room to go swimming around all over the place. No, I don't know where people got the conception that bettas need 10 gallons of water for a betta. No, the bettas have been around a long time. In the store, they sell them in little bitty bowls. In Thailand, they have about half-gallon containers they grow them up in. If they grow up in those containers, they've not known anything their entire life except a small container. That's all they've known their entire life. So who says they need to have a 10 gallon? No, they don't. So that's why they sell these small tanks where you see the 1 gallon tanks, you see the 1.6 gallon, 2 gallon, 3 gallon tank. Those are big enough. Even a jar like this, or even a 2 gallon jar, will be more than big enough, or a 1 gallon jar, more than big enough for a betta to take care of, and it will live for years and years in that container. They are a solitary animal. They don't really like too many other fish in with them because of the fact of it is, if you notice, if you put them in an aquarium, they usually will hide somewhere, go up to the top. Once in a while you'll see them swimming around, but most of the time they're getting away from the other fish that are more aggressive than they are, that can wind up even picking on their tails and everything else. So they're best to be kept solitary animals, the same as the paradise fish. So that's it for this video, part 3. I'll get into lighting, and I will give you where I bought this in case you're interested. And like I said, it's just something different. And I think that those who are interested in it, but I want to tell you up front, it's not a money saver. So don't think I can do this and not buy an aquarium. You can buy an aquarium cheaper than this. But this gives you versatility, and it gives you the fun of making it yourself versus aquarium. You know, it's out of the box, and it's something different. It's novelty. You can put this, like, let's say during Christmas, whatever, you can put this as a centerpiece in the middle of a table. You know, novelty, something different. All you have to do is empty it, leave some water in it, you can move it. It's not that heavy. You can move it anywhere you want in the house. Or like here, I have it out in the lanai. It kind of goes because you kind of think out in the lanai, you want to sit out here, have a beverage. So it kind of fits the theme of what you would be thinking about on a hot summer day. You're going to open up, and you know, it kind of fits that theme. So that's why I did it. So next time, this is Dr. Novak. Happy fish keeping, and part 3 will be on lighting for such aquariums.